discussion.
It doesn't. It reads to me like we support it because it's in there. That's why we're restating it.
That's the style that's been used throughout the entire document. Every section where we're referencing a commission resolution or recommendation, so it follows through in all the other sections as well. So it's just a consistent style issue.
Okay. I think, sorry, we're just having a little chat here, and I think there is the issue of context is important, but it's just a little bit, picking up Councillor Casey's point, it's a little bit hard to just get really clear what is context, what belongs in the Commission statement, and what is our response. So there's just a way of just differentiating that a little bit more clearly.
So we can have a look at that to try and do that.
Yep, no, got that point. Councillor Quacks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'll be voting for the recommendations, but I would like to make some comments on this first of all. I'm going to say to Councillor Lee, don't worry, Councillor Lee, as housing becomes more expensive, people will go elsewhere anyway. So maybe we won't get the population growth that we're expecting because people are going to be priced out of Auckland in the future.
The market.
Which brings me to the point that 24 of our submission, it talks about that providing affordable housing is a priority for the council and for Aucklanders. Well, it may be for Aucklanders and the people who live here, but it appears to me that our actions, it's hard to reconcile those actions to that statement that's in that 24, because all the actions that we take seem to be actually less about providing affordable housing and more about pursuing ideological means or and it's not true that all successful cities or many successful cities struggle with affordability. It's just not true. And I think that if you look at some of the cities overseas, especially in the United States, that haven't followed this smart growth or this land strangulation policy that we seem to be so intent on following, that actually they do provide affordable housing in places like Houston, Texas, Atlanta, Raleigh, North Carolina. Many of those cities, well, those cities, I'm familiar with all those cities. They're all very, very fast-growing cities, faster growing than our cities. And if you have a look at the real estate pages, Google those, have a look at the real estate pages or the real estate that's for sale in Houston or Atlanta or in Raleigh, and have a look what you can buy for $400,000 in those cities compared with what you pay in this city for $1 million. It's just not even close. You can buy a mansion in those fast-growing, vibrant cities in the United States for $400,000, and you pay. And I think that just a while ago there was a trip that all the councillors went on, and they saw a property in Panmure, which I'm familiar with, which is the old hotel, I think, that was in Panmure many years ago. It's just a ramshackle building on a property valued at $750,000. And we've made that, and we've done that to ourselves, and more importantly, we have done this to the people of Auckland. One of the things about Houston, of course, and mainly in Texas, is they do use innovative ways of providing infrastructure. And the one that's used in Texas is municipal utility districts, or what they call the MUDs. and they are used to provide electricity, gas, water, sewage, wastewater and so forth. And I think that in our submission, we perhaps should have asked for some investigation of that particular mechanism for providing infrastructure. And maybe it's not too late to have them to have that looked at. I understand from talking to council staff that actually requires some legislation to be passed. But while we're advocating for other things, maybe we should be advocating for that innovative way of providing infrastructure as well. Madam Chair, at the workshop, I said, well, I was sympathetic to why a Minister of the Crown might want to have some input into the plans of the Auckland Council, and I note that we disagree with that, and I personally disagree with that at all as well, and I don't think that we need the Minister standing over our shoulder, or any Minister of the Crown standing over our shoulder telling us what to do. But I do understand the reason why they may wish to take that position. And I talked about the economic and the social justice implications of a housing market and land supply market that's got out of control. And Councillor Casey said to me, would you explain what you're talking about, Councillor Quacks? And so, Madam Chair, if you'll indulge me, for the sake of Councillor Casey, I would like to explain to her what I meant by that at the workshop.
If we can just keep it reasonably brief,
Of
councillor.
course, you know, I'm always brief.
We won't debate that.
It's very fast. You're fast.
So, first thing, that a housing supply or a land supply market that's out of kilter does, and which is controlled by central government or by the Reserve Bank in this case, of course, is it has to keep interest rates high to dampen down the housing market. And if you keep the interest rates high, Councillor Casey, then of course what happens is the dollar continues to stay, or our exchange rate continues to stay at a high rate, and that high rate then impacts on exporters. So, and in terms of social equity, I think we'll all agree that there is a growing gap in Auckland between the rich and the poor. And the rich are the people in this city who own property and who have property that generally is an investment, and as we saw the other day, I think it goes up at an average of $516 a week. So, Councillor Casey, your property in Mount Albert probably works harder than you do.
Oh, councillor,
that's
you were good. You were good until that last statement.
A double shot.
And
Madam Chair, let me
councillors,
explain myself.
there
was no malice in that, Madam
I know there was.
Councillor Quacks knows nothing about economics.
Hang on. We've done well up to now, but
Madam Chair,
Councillor
Madam
Casey
Chair,
should be able
councillor,
It's a quacksism, that one. It's a
I
quacksism.
don't hear anybody calling a point of order, and I don't expect anybody to call a point of order on that. But let me explain myself.
we're just
explain
defending our
myself.
colleague. Councillor, this has been quite a long speech. I've got four
Madam
more
Chair,
speakers, so if you could just wrap
I'm
it up.
sure that somebody will ask for an extension of time.
Happy to do
Well,
that.
Councillors, we haven't been taking time. We're just hoping for good manners. Go.
Yeah. Madam Chair, what I mean by that, and it's no reflection on the very hard work that Councillor Casey does, I'm just saying that the income that she derives from her property, and from all of us who own property in the city, our properties will be probably making a better return than the work that we do around this council.
You're muddling up
even
income
worse.
with
Okay.
capital value, are you
I
not?
think you might be digging
Mr.
yourself a bit of a
Economist.
hole there, councillor Quack. Thank you. Councillor Quack, just in response.
Madam Chair, I only make that point because in Auckland, people now do not buy houses
Yeah.
for their families, they buy houses as an investment.
Yep.
So,
But we're now,
and
let's just
let me
get back to the
continue.
job in hand.
Madam Chair, let me continue to explain to councillor Casey what she wanted to explain the other day. So, in terms of, now we have more people in the city renting than ever before, as housing ownership plummets, not drops, but plummets. And especially, it's plummeting, and I heard the other day that for Pacifica and Maori, the home ownership now is down around about 17%. That's an absolute disgrace. That is what's happened in this city. And what happens is as more people rent, we find there's less social cohesion in our area, in our city.
Yeah,
We find
councillor, just hold on. You're
Point of order.
You're preaching to the choir here. This is exactly the discussion that we've all been part of. We absolutely agree with you, so we don't need to revisit the substance of this. So can you please wrap up your speech now, because we'd like to focus back onto the
Madam
direction
Chair,
that we're setting.
you gave me the opportunity to explain to councillor Casey what I meant by what I was,
I
what I
think
said
she's
the other
across
day.
it now, councillor Casey. Are you well across this now? She's
Sure.
well across it.
And I'm sure that she, and Madam Chair, may I say that I'm sure that councillor Casey appreciates the explanation I'm giving her, as she always does.
Okay.
Right.
We won't ask her to clarify that.
Yes,
Thank you, councillor.
Okay. Very good. And to reiterate this point somewhat, and to put an explanation point, yesterday, I know that councillor and I had a meeting with a council official, and expressing their, and I understand that the councillors may be expressing their concerns about what is happening in Papatoetoe in order to try and overcome this housing crisis that we have and that's been building for the last 20 years. On sections in Papatoetoe in South Auckland, there are now houses going in with 7 bedrooms, and each bedroom has an ensuite. They have an ensuite, and they have a community laundry area and a community common area. These are not houses any longer. These are boarding houses, but we allow them, and they don't breach any rule that we have.
Okay, councillor,
And so,
councillor, I'm sorry, I'm in the interests of time, we need to get back to the Productivity Commission report that we have spent a huge amount of time putting together. We're now straying into a wider discussion, so we'll move on to, thank you for the very in-depth explanation.
thank you,
of
Madam
your
Chair, and
support of
I
this.
really appreciate you allowing me to explain to councillor Casey what
She's
the
cool.
implications of the policies that we've followed for the last 20 years. And we then continue to say in our submission, we're concerned about this. Well, quite clearly, we don't walk the talk.
Thank you, councillor. Some of us are trying very hard to walk the talk.
Yes,
Member
I know,
nominee.
not hard enough, I got to say.
I'll be pretty succinct. It relates to the National Policy Statement on Urban Issues in paragraph 46. Now, I understand that our staff had been involved in the development, and it's just a minor amendment to just, I think, clarify what was discussed. And so I'm not sure, Chair, whether it needs to be an amendment or whether it's something you do. There's the amendment, if you're happy with it. It was just clarifying that discussion that had been had.
Can you just give us a little bit more context,
Well,
Member Ngamane?
Of course, here, there's been varied approaches to Māori land and treaty settlement land. And I think the intent of the submission was, and varied approaches across local authorities. And I think the intent of paragraph 46 was to seek clarification at a, like this would be something that would be good to seek guidance at a national level on. So the change is just making that quite explicit, that we're talking about Māori land and treaty settlement land.
Yep. Okay.
That's all that the intent was.
Okay, no, that's clear. Reasonable comfort
Through
with
the
that?
chair, that's very helpful.
Clarifying?
Thank you very much.
Yep, that's good. Councillor Wood.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I go to the section 5 on page 51, looking at address infrastructure financing through partnerships section. And I thought that I mentioned the fact that 10 years ago, in 2000, or 11 years ago now, in 2004, the government made a cash injection of $1.62 billion into Auckland. And that was for transport infrastructure in its widest sense. So I wanted to, raise that, because I think that's the kind of approach we should be having to the government right now to deal with this shortfall. Because I can think of projects such as Amity out Councillor Quacks's area, where it's kind of stalled because of lack of funding, because it's not a national highway, it's a local road under Auckland Transport, and we don't have the funding to do that job. Now, that would give better capacity on those links out to where the new suburbs are, like Botany and Ormiston and those places. So that was one. Mill Road, well, we've heard of Mill Road, and, at ad infinitum here, and it's a local road again. And then there's Penlink. So, and that's another one which would open up capacity in the Whangaparoa Peninsula. So I think that this document should actually talk to the Productivity Commission on the fact that Auckland needs to be a special case, because we do have this real problem with pressure from a number of sources in relation to on our residential properties for people accommodation. And what I'm saying there is that the government needs to recognise that, come to the party. And if we don't put it in the document, well, we're not going to get there. Yeah. Because I've talked about this a number of occasions. I just said to Councillor Cooper, when are we ever going to have that meeting with Bill English and some other ministers, the Minister of Transport, in relation to the North Western Motorway busway? And, well, she doesn't know. And I reckon that our relationship with Wellington has got to be, we've got to up the ante there. Yep. And make some progress. And we've got to really, we talked about at the last general election that we were going to have a prospectus for Auckland. Now, so
Councillor, I know, we do need to manage this well, and remember, we've got advocacy directly to government. Okay. This is a direct to government advocacy point. Yeah. We don't need to go via the ProdCom to do this.
I want to see something in this document in relation to a one-off or a cash injection for Auckland. That's important. It must be in there. Thank you.
Do you want? I think we need to. Can you? I'll just get our. Well,
I think the point to make here is that, as you know, we're working on the transport alignment project.
Yeah.
I think that's the appropriate avenue to advocate for that joint.
No, well, I want to see it in this document. I mean, if it's talking about transport alignment, well, we've got support use of motorway pricing and further discussion on road pricing. Well, I'm certain that Aucklanders would sooner see us get a major cash injection. Okay. If we got $1.62 billion from the Crown account, it didn't come from New Zealand or the Trans Fund, it came from the Crown account. It's separate money. It was over and above what was going into the National Road Program. Yeah. So that must be in this document, please.
Madam Chair, point of clarification. What Councillor Wood is referring to, I think, is the assets from the Auckland Regional Services Trust.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not? You're talking to...
I'm talking about in 2004, when the Auckland AAA...
December 12, 2003.
There you are, or 2003, sorry. NZ AAA came into being. Auckland got a $1.62 billion cash injection for transport projects, which is over 10 years, and it's now finished.
Thank you. What I wanted to be quite clear on is where we have the opportunity, as Councillor Wood is advocating, within those opportunities around the AECT and others, that there are opportunities for Auckland for the future, because we do need those one-off opportunities, and I want to support Councillor Wood in that.
What we're saying, and I don't want to be undemocratic, the point we're making is the Productivity Commission are not the boss of funding. The Productivity Commission we're giving feedback to the Productivity Commission on process. We need to go direct to government and say, we want this funding. And I think what Councillor Wood's asking for is absolutely right. We've asked for, we're waiting for, and we're still waiting for some of that direct relationship with government on these critical issues. We need to go straight to government on these issues. I'm a bit unclear, and correct me if I'm wrong, to our two managers, the Productivity cannot instruct government to give a one-off funding payment to Auckland.